Hi everybody, this is Bethany from Wandering Intentionally, and my husband and I and our 35-foot Montana High Country, along with our Dodge Ram 2500, have been just starting out on the road for our latest RV adventure. This one was actually our first trip, and we're talking about what can really happen and what you should be prepared for on that first trip. We're going to be giving you some tips on what to look for and also some things to consider before you hit the road. I hope you'll join us. So first, I thought I'd give you a little breakdown of what actually happened on our trip. As I said, this was our first trip, and we decided that we had been since January. We've owned the RV since January and had put a lot of thought into what we wanted to do. We had certain expectations going on our first trip. And this is our first time owning an RV this large. We've actually had campers in the past, but nothing to this extent, nothing this big. So for us, there was a lot of uncertainty and just a lot of unknown ahead of us. And certainly that came back and bit us in the butt. All right, so we started out, our first night was actually going to be, we were headed to Bar Harbor to stay in Blackwoods Campground up in Acadia National Park. But on a whim, I decided that we should try something closer to home for the first night. And we booked a Harvest Host stay in Boothbay Harbor, which is about 45 minutes away from our home. And so my husband worked in the morning. We got everything set to go. He got home, we hooked up the camper, and we were down there by about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. By the way, I'm going to be doing a review of that Harvest Host, but I have to tell you, sneak peek, they were excellent down there. So very kind considering kind of what we went through. So the first thing we did was to set the camper up the way we wanted it to be. Now, this was a site that had no electricity, no water, no sewer. So we were really boondocking in this site. Even though it was in a nice area. We were actually in a campsite. So hubby had tried the electronics on the RV, and before we left, he had tested everything, checked everything. But what he didn't take into consideration, and neither did I, was that we were testing all of these things while we were actually connected to the house. We had it on shore power. So that was mistake number one. What we should have done was disconnected it and checked everything, because when we got to the site and we disconnected from our truck, we realized that the battery was dead. So this was about between 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So we thought about what we were going to do. We happened to speak with one of the gentlemen that owns the place we were in. And he had mentioned, because of where we were, there's a limited amount of places that we could get a battery to run the this. Now, keep in mind, without a battery, you can't stabilize anything unless you're hooked to the truck. You can't put out your slides. You can't run the jack system on it. And we really needed to be able to do that. As long as we were hooked up with the truck, we could do it. But we didn't want to stay hooked up to the truck and run the risk of draining the battery on the truck. So we ended up saying, okay, we're going to bite the bullet. We went down to the local parts store in Boothbay Harbor. By the way, thank you all. And we got a new battery for that. And we really did. We got an RV marine battery. It happens, this is a local, very large marine area, a lot of fishermen. So we did manage to get a pretty good deal on that one. Cost us a little over $100. but we have a new battery in the system, and we did go with a slightly larger one. Now, I will keep in mind, if you're planning on changing that, you want to make sure that you are putting in a battery that will fit into your system. We had enough room built into the battery compartment on our 35-foot Montana that we could upgrade it to just a slightly larger battery. So we got back. My husband had brought a few tools. He installed the battery, got everything all set to go, and we thought we were doing great. We actually put out the slides, and we sat down to do some relaxing. And the way our system is set up, you can check our previous video where we talk about what the layout of the RV is. In this case, we have opposing slides in the living room. So one side is the kitchen. It has a slide with the stove and the refrigerator on it. And on the opposite side, we have a double recliner and the table set up. So we had put all the slides out, had it all set to go, had it leveled. And my husband realized that one of the pillows had fallen off of the couch that runs along the back of the RV and had gotten stuck in one of the slides. So I put the slide in a little bit. He pulls the pillow out. We think we're good to go. We put the slide back out and we sit down to relax. After a while, I decided to get up and sit at the table to do some knitting. Because I don't like to sit down in a chair like that. I like to sit at a table, and all of a sudden the floor felt really strange on it, like it was sinking. And I probably screamed a little louder than I should have, jumped up, and hubby and I looked, and what had happened was when we brought that slide in, it had come in crooked because of the pillow that had been put into place. So when it went back out, that corner was out further than the other one, and it had actually dropped the floor in that section. Here we were on the first night of our trip, and we were dealing with a dropped floor, the possibility that we wouldn't be able to get the slide in place, and we were panicking. I was literally sick to my stomach. I was thinking, what are we going to do now? The saving grace for this, the first saving grace was that we were only 45 minutes from home. And so we came home, we got a jack, and we got some extra boards, and we went back and we attempted to jack up side of the slide and put it back in. Now, keep in mind, there's no RV dealers down in that area. This is a peninsula that runs out into the ocean, of course, so it's very limited. There's quite a few campgrounds down there, but also a lot of things weren't quite opened yet because this was Mother's Day weekend. So we decided to, after trying and trying, we realized we didn't have enough, between the two of us, we could not get that floor lifted enough in order to get that in. And we weren't quite sure what to do. So at this point, it's dark. We're frustrated. And frankly, probably pretty close to giving up at that point. But we knew we had too much time and effort invested in this, and we really didn't want to do that. And so we did the only thing we could think of, and that was, we said, well, we're going to go to sleep. We'll tackle this in the morning with fresh heads and be able to maybe come up with a way to fix this. So we did. The first night we actually slept pretty well, considering everything that was going on. Probably part of it was due to exhaustion. When we got up in the morning, we tried again. We were unable to lift that slide floor it had actually slid out at an angle, so the lip of it had actually gone over the slide. Now, from what I understand, this is kind of a common thing with slides, and probably it could have been a lot worse. The problem was, it was at the same time it was bowing the wall next to where the slide comes in. Each time we tried it, it was bowing it. It was coming in at the top. It wasn't coming in at the bottom. And we really didn't want to push it because the last thing we wanted to do was break a cable, because this is on a cable system. I knew enough to know not to push that too far, but it still did leave us stuck because we knew we were supposed to be out of there at noon, and we were supposed to be headed to Bar Harbor, which was another 3.5 hours drive from there, and wouldn't be able to do it if we couldn't close the slide. So this comes up to tip number 2, which is have a backup plan in place. Know what to do in case of an emergency. And this was an emergency for us. So after calling several RV places and knowing that there was no way they were going to send anybody else out to fix it for us, we had resigned ourselves to the fact that we were probably going to have to cancel our Bar Harbor reservations and stay where we were, which thankfully the Harvest Host was, fantastic. They told us, no problem, stay where you are, just get it fixed. And so after some consideration, I decided to check and see if there was an RV mobile repair service in that area or someone close by who could come out and do this. Now, I've seen them on several other video channels. If you don't know what a mobile RV repair system is, these are people who are independently trained for whatever reason, run their own services, and you can find them by Googling them. Luckily, as lucky as we could possibly be, there happened to be someone in the area for us. In fact, he said, I'm in Booth Bay right now. When he called me back, he said, I actually have 8 calls that I'm doing in Booth Bay right now, even though he lived near us back in our area of town. We were so grateful. And he said, I'll fit you in at lunchtime. When we take a break for lunch, we'll come down. We're opening campers right now. We'll see what we can do for you. I was still feeling so very sick to my stomach because I just, you're seeing dollar signs. You're thinking to yourself, this is my first trip. This is horrible. What are we going to do? And when I called him, I did ask him the rate, and it was an emergency service rate. I think it was $130, it's either $130 or $150 for the emergency call, and then an hourly rate. And the hourly rate, I believe, was $125 to $130. And he said that he charges however long he's there is what he charges for. He seemed really nice on the phone, so when he showed up in a great little van. Him and his co-worker were there and set to work immediately. They were, very friendly and outgoing. I'm going to link him down below. His name, if you're in Maine and you are looking for an RV mobile tech, he goes in the mid-coast area all the way up. I think the farthest he said that he does is Rockland, and his name is Chris Barter. Chris and his co-worker Chris, there was 2 of them, came and took a look at it. Now, I was a little panicked because I had my husband. I told my husband, I said, you help them with this. I'm at a loss. And so they walked around it. They took a look at it. He had asked me a couple of questions over the phone. And I had told him what kind of system was in it, what it was, that type of situation. Apologies for the water. That's the dog. So Chris took a look at it. There were a few swear words, and honestly, I mean, he is so sweet, but every time he did, I got a little more panicky, and I'm not gonna say that I didn't do some praying. I did through this whole thing, hoping that they were going to be able to at least get the slide in so that we could, at the worst case scenario, get it home. That was, you know, that was the worst case scenario. So between the two of them, they were able to lift it up and push in the slide so that it could be in. It could go in. It took them about 20 minutes for them to do it. And they did spend some time going over things with us. They were great. They, you know, they absolutely did a fantastic job explaining things to us, what to look for, what to worry about. They did tell us we can use the slide. We can't put it out all the way, but we can put it out. We can put it out part way. And again, that's the dog. So we would be able to, you know, we had it in. It was such a relief off of our shoulders. So that was tip number 2. Tip number 3, well, I would say if you're going to, you have an emergency plan in place, know who to call, have numbers available. If this were a flat tire, who would I call? If this were, you know, an accident, did I have my insurance papers? If it was a fire, did I have a fire extinguisher? I had those things, but I didn't have a person to call for an RV issue. And so that was being prepared for that as well. I would say my next tip is don't take everything you own. You don't need it on your first trip. Honest to goodness, you will figure it out. We took food, but we were so tired most of the time that we either didn't eat much or we ordered takeout. At one point on our trip, we actually got a big pizza and ate the pizza. I mean, that was just, it was easy, it was simple, and we let go of that. Which brings me up to my next tip, and that is to let go of expectations. When you're taking your first trip, make sure that you don't try to cram too much expectations into it, and let go of how it's going to end. You know, this was just certainly our first night. We managed to pack in a lot of issues in it in one night. But thankfully for us, we had people that we could fall back on who were wonderful and helped us out. But again, I would suggest that if you're going to do this, to let go of what you think it's going to be. You know, definitely that's my number 4. Probably one of the biggest tips here is to let go of that and to know that it's gonna happen. But what, you know, we didn't understand the leveling system that great. We now have a better understanding of it, and you'll see more of that when I get to the Bar Harbor video, that we struggled with the leveling system because we've never had an RV, and no one expects you to be an expert on it the first time. You know, and every camper is different, honestly. So be kind to yourself. And the other part about it, the last tip I'm going to tell you is this, is nothing is worth being angry or being upset about with this. We actually found we had other issues later on in it with leveling, as I said, is we backed away from the situation. We didn't let anger get in the way of us, because if we had, we would have just probably ruined the whole vacation. And I think that for us was the most important part, is despite everything, we had a really good time because we let go of those expectations. We learned a lot from this trip. And this isn't to discourage anyone else. My last bonus tip on this is, for the first time you go out, I've heard a lot of people say camp at home. I wouldn't suggest camping at home, but I would suggest going someplace close to home within driving distance, because that's going to make the big difference. If you have forgotten something, if you do need something, or even if you just have to get your RV home, that's going to make a big difference. So that's my bonus tip for that. Anyway, that is it for now. I hope that you get something out of this. You know, definitely be kind to yourself when you're doing this. No one is an expert on this. You know, it's a learning experience, and we actually went on to have a really great weekend. So I hope that you will keep this in mind when you're doing it. And I'm going to post some information down below. I'm going to put Chris's information there in case you need it, as well as some upcoming information on what I have for videos. So that's it for now. I want to thank you all for joining us, and we look forward to putting up some more videos with y'all. Thank you. Sending blessings from Maine. Bye-bye.